Marhaba, Musakar. Assalamu alaikum, and Masafir for the Egyptians in the room. At my line of work, I do participate in a lot of events. And I asked one of the organizers of one of the major events here in Ottawa, at the EY Center, when you get the best attendance. They said, when the weather is neither too good or too bad. And Ottawa is the worst place for that, because you can never get that optimum condition. So I'm really encouraged by the number of people that are here tonight, and I would like to thank you on behalf of the Egyptian Canadian Coalition for Democracy. The Egyptian Canadian Coalition for Democracy is a group whose mission is to support Egypt and the Egyptian people in their pursuit of universal values, such as democracy, freedom, human rights, and the rule of law. Those values that are enshrined in our Canadian Charter of Rights and have been brought forward in the Middle East by the recent revolutions. So I'd like to thank you all for being here. I'm allotted 5 minutes, so I'm going to take the next 3 minutes left to share a personal quick thought. I was probably 15 months old when my dad was taken away in a similar situation. And I can't recall nor can I record the reaction of the people around us at the time. I was too young. Probably the same age as some of Khaled's kids. But I wasn't too young 10 years later when he was exonerated and released. I was old enough to listen to the people who received him, and he had a hero's welcome when he came out. But what stuck in my mind was the two words that most people repeated at the time. Everyone that came and gave him a big hug said exactly the same two words. One I understood, congratulations. Almost everyone said that. Congratulations, Mabruk in Arabic. The other word, as an 11-year-old, was very difficult for me to understand. Every person that said congratulations followed it by, I am sorry, or forgive me, or pardon me. And I couldn't understand why. Why would you say something like that in such a joyful occasion? It wasn't until much later, obviously, when I realized they were saying I'm sorry because they doubted him. Those were his co-workers, his neighbors, our family members, our neighbors. They were saying I'm sorry because they doubted him. They believed what was said about him. They were saying I'm sorry because they didn't do enough, or they didn't do anything. Or they were saying I'm sorry because they didn't live up to the values that they always thought they hold dear. And since then, I've learned one thing that those around me will always hear me say. I don't practice it as much, but it's definitely something that I say a lot. Do not settle for sorry if you're capable of being right. And I'd like you to enjoy the evening. I'm almost certain that tonight we'll be moved, we'll be enlightened. But what I hope for is that our speakers will guide us down a path that would allow us to be right and not to be sorry when congratulations is in order. Thank you on behalf of the Egyptian Canadian Coalition for Democracy.
The full day of protest became a spontaneous celebration as the end of a 30-year state of emergency was finally in sight. I'll pass the rest to soon-to-be Dr. Khaled.
I'll never forget that afternoon's unique rendition of Canaan's song, Waving Flag. The handmade Egyptian flag I was given that day still flies in my office at Amnesty. What's happening in Egypt over 3 years later is an incredible betrayal of the hope we all felt that day. The news of hundreds more death sentences demonstrates how arbitrary and selective Egypt's criminal justice system has become. The courts are displaying complete contempt for the most basic principles of a fair trial. What else can we make of the fact that verdicts are being delivered by judges who have neither reviewed evidence nor allowed the defense to cross-examine witnesses? And how could they, when in some sessions the lawyers and defendants aren't even allowed into the courtroom? Right now, Egypt's judiciary is at risk of becoming just another part of the authorities' repressive machinery. If some of those who continue to anguish in detention without charge, including Khaled and Qazzaz, ever do face trial, what hope is there that anything resembling justice will be forthcoming? Yet that is what the Canadian government would like us to believe. During his recent trip to Egypt, Foreign Affairs Minister John Baird quietly raised the cases of Mohammed Fahmy and Khaled al-Qazzaz with his counterpart in Egypt, something we had been pressing him to do, and of course we're glad to hear. At the same time, however, he insisted that the judicial process in Egypt must be allowed to unfold and that Canada could not interfere. Naming human rights violations for what they are isn't interference. On the contrary, failing to protest the unfolding of an unfair system actually helps enable human rights violations to continue. It's time for Canada to unequivocally speak out and call for an end to Egypt's downward human rights spiral. Thank you.